Hey everybody, welcome to Culinary Characters Unlocked. I'm David Page. On this episode, the unique challenges of running hotel restaurants and competing at fine dining in a celebrated food city. The city is Savannah, Georgia, the hotel is the Thompson, and the chef is Victoria Shore. Chef, how are you? Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you for having me. I'm doing great today. How about yourself?
I'm fine, but you're in Savannah and I'm not.
Yep. Well, it's actually got kind of cold here last night. So.
Oh yeah, what? 60?
No, there was some frost.
Ooh. To start, what's the single best meal you ever had in your life?
Ooh.
And I know those are hard to quantify. Mine was at a little place in Luxembourg.
Oh, nice. Good Scrabble points with that one as well.
Thank you.
I would say like the first thing that immediately jumps to mind would be at Etxebarri, in a tiny little village I don't even really remember the name of in Spain. Just a really overall great experience from the service. I think just the surroundings of like you're in this tiny old home and you look out and you just see, you know, the rolling green hills of the Pyrenees and a field of cows. And as you're looking at these cows, the server's like, oh, and this cultured smoked butter is from that cow right there. And it just, like, all of the food was amazing. The execution was flawless. Just the quality of the ingredients was one of the most, like, just noticeable. Like, you can just taste the quality of the ingredients because they haven't done much to it, really. You know, they kind of cooked it. It's like just butter and bread or just some, like, whipped goat cheese or just caviar and egg yolks. Like, it's all very, very simple food, but delicious. And I think just having been, I don't know, not really sure what I was walking into or ready for. You know, you've seen the YouTube videos or you've seen Anthony Bourdain go there and you're kind of like, oh, this seems really cool. But getting to experience it in person and it actually live up to those expectations was really memorable.
Which restaurant is this?
It's called Asador Etxebarri.
And where is it?
It's in the middle of nowhere in the Basque country of Spain. So it's, I think Tolosa would be probably the biggest town nearby. I'd say, you know, it's an hour's drive through these really wiggly, windy mountains. I think we had to stop to wait for some sheep to cross the road on the way back to, I think Pamplona is where we were driving from. But it was just a very, like, overall fantastic experience. So I think kind of, you know, even above and beyond the food, just the getting there and experiencing the food. And we got to go into the kitchen and, you know, say hi to Chef Victor. So that was really neat.
Michelin stars?
You know, I think he doesn't actually do the Michelin guide. He's on the Pellegrino list, but I think they're just so far in the middle of nowhere that the guide doesn't go out there.
The unreachable outskirts, the exurbs of Catalonia. When did you realize you were so deeply into food?
I think kind of my senior year of college when I was working on finishing up my history thesis and, you know, my friends and I are sitting around in existential crisis mode trying to look for jobs and, you know, what does life after college look like?
What had you majored in?
History and anthropology.
Well, perfect path to the kitchen.
You know, I think I did somewhere in my mind as I was going through those degrees was interested in like the history of food, done a study abroad in Oxford and gone and visited all the castles and looked at the medieval kitchens and, you know, like, oh, this is super cool. So I think I had food still in mind, but more with an academic focus, or like I'd always really liked cookbooks and food magazines. You know, I still have my complete 1994 through the end of time fine cooking collection. And so I think I was planning on kind of shifting that humanities background into food publishing. It's kind of something I still maybe think about, but I ended up getting into kitchens because every job that I was looking at in like a magazine or publishing house or anything cookbook related all seemed to want like, you know, 2 years of culinary experience if you didn't have some kind of publishing or journalism background. So I was like, okay, I'll just go do that. You know, I think a lot of my friends were considering graduate school and they all had weird specific passions. Like I love the Napoleonic Wars, or I'm super interested in microbial rhizomes, or, you know, like they had a specific interest. And the only thing
that covers kind of the gamut there,
everything.
By the way.
So for me, I was like, oh, the only thing I've been consistently passionate about throughout college was kind of inviting friends over for dinner, cooking for myself, or going to visit my parents and having these like my dad's a great home cook. So like all these very elaborate meals and dinners that he would prepare.
Was that your first cooking influence, your dad?
Yeah.
And what did you eat growing up?
A little bit of everything. He's definitely eclectic.
You were living in Atlanta as a child?
Yep.
A lot of ethnic food there?
Yeah, and we definitely took advantage of it. I did competitive archery for a while as a kid, so we spent a lot of time on the road, kind of going to tournaments to practice. There was this one restaurant called Saigon Cafe that was my absolute favorite. So we like a lot of Vietnamese food growing up. My dad always loved like really tiny hole in the wall Mexican restaurants. The more they made me uncomfortable, the better he thought they were. So it was a lot of that.
He was right.
Yeah, definitely. I look back now and I'm like, you were a man of wisdom, and I taught me everything I know. And then when I was in high school, we moved to a different part of town that was like heavily Korean. And that was definitely like huge food exploration moment. I mean, I really remember the first time I walked into a Korean restaurant being like, what does that smell? And then you kind of like...
Well, it was obviously kimchi and wonderful.
And yes. And, my first reaction was an erroneous and uninformed one. And now I love Korean food. And honestly, one of the things I miss most being in Savannah is easy access to just a lot of Korean barbecue and tofu soup and kimchi and Asian grocery stores. So it's, kind of a meet cute almost of it, like a rom-com. It was not an auspicious beginning, and now it's a true love.
And there was Lebanese food in your family?
Yep. So my dad's mother is Lebanese. She was born here in the States, but from immigrants that came over early in the 20th century. So there's actually a pretty huge Lebanese community in Oklahoma City where my dad grew up. And so being Lebanese, you've got a big family, and pretty much what you do is cook and talk about food and argue about food. And
well, here's the argument. Kibbe, raw or cooked?
I like it always. I think my favorite is the fried balls, because you just get like crispy outside, creamy on the inside, like really good flavor. But, if it's like freshly prepared at home, raw kibbe, delicious.
Okay, for anyone unfamiliar, kibbe is ground lamb with bulgur wheat and I guess mint?
Yeah, I think the seasonings are probably a bit up for debate. I normally put like 7-spice or some kind of like Baharat seasoning. I personally don't know if it's super traditional or just the way my family cooked things, but growing up with that kind of like cinnamon, what you traditionally think of like baking spice, in with the savory meat and a lot of butter. Typically, if you're not frying it, it's baked and you're just dousing it in clarified butter. So butter makes everything better.
It does. So where'd you go to school?
I went to UGA.
University of Georgia in Athens.
Yes.
And you were the kid in the dorm room who was cooking up the French fries.
It's funnily enough, literally, well, this was, I think, pre-air fryer. So I was the kid cooking French fries and not draining them properly and flooding my entire apartment with hot fryer oil. But that only happened once. My roommate wasn't there at the time, so she never knew. So sorry.
So you leave school with a degree you don't want, and you think, what the hell, I should get into the restaurant business.
Yep.
What happened?
I found a website called goodfoodjobs.com, and I had one job at Chick-fil-A while I was in college, which, that was my introduction to the restaurant industry, which was fun. I really enjoyed it. I like kind of the fast pace.
And look, the dirty little secret of most chefs is that they like Chick-fil-A. They just don't want to admit it.
I mean, for what it's very quality for what it is. So, and I admire their commitment to efficiency, and really figuring that out is pretty amazing. So,
but when did you really start in the restaurant biz?
So, goodfoodjobs.com, I applied to a bunch of different things, from farm intern to chocolate decorator to whatever. And I ended up getting a job or internship with this family-run bed and breakfast in Maine, in the tiny, tiny little village of Wiscasset. And they had like a, maybe 10-seat restaurant, 6-room hotel. The owners were a Swiss couple. He used to like run the entire F&B program for the Rockefeller Center. So he's retired chef who, I assume this is kind of how...
No pressure working for him.
Well, I didn't really even understand it at the time. Like looking back now, I'm like, oh my God. But he was there to kind of just chill out. That was, I think, a chef's idea of a retirement project, was running a small 24/7 business.
Well,
Whatever.
there you go.
But yes, it was the couple, their daughter, their son had an organic farm kind of just down the road. And then we had a little like home garden there at the hotel. So I got to do a little bit of organic gardening, a little bit of pastry, a little bit of working in the restaurant, a little bit of serving in the restaurant. And I just kind of fell in love with it. They really like adopted me and took me in as part of the family for the summer. And that, it was just a really awesome experience that I think gave me a good taste for that kind of feeling and community that you can get in a hospitality job. So when that was coming to an end, I was sort of thinking about some of the restaurants and businesses I had interacted with in Athens while I was in college there. And there was one in particular that kind of stood out to me. I was thinking that like I really enjoyed hosting parties and that maybe catering was something I wanted to examine. And I remembered meeting at a Taste of Athens event, like my senior year of college, the chef of this catering company called Homemade. Her name's Mimi Mamas. She's awesome and amazing. And I think being, again, not very familiar with the restaurant industry and kind of intimidated by the image of, shouty male chef, like burning people with pans. I was like, oh, like she was a woman. She seemed super nice when I met her. So I just kind of started like cold emailing her like, hey, I'm, available starting in December, looking for a job, just repetitively, just cold emailing this poor woman until finally, when it was like beginning of December, she's like, all right, I've got a busy night. You can come do a trail and see how you like it. And we'll see, how it works out. And that worked out. So I got a job. And then kind of the day I showed up, the pastry lady needed help. So she was just like, all right, go help Joe make cookies. And then I ended up kind of working my way through the pastry program there, where I met Shay Remmel, who's a really good friend, now a restaurant owner in Athens as well. And she taught me so much just kind of about the community, the family, pastry, working in a restaurant. I really fell in love with her and her husband, Ryan. They're just incredible people. And I think the sort of people that really make the hospitality industry and I love them so much, and I'm so happy for them and the success that they've had there in Athens. So it was a really great opportunity and great people to work with. I think at the end of it, after walking into one too many mornings of just coolers and half-empty hotel pans everywhere, I was like, all right, catering is not what I want to do. So I started looking for like restaurants to apply to, which is how I ended up back in Atlanta, working with Castellucci Hospitality. Again, I kind of just cold emailed the owner, because I don't know, I thought that's how you get jobs.
Well, in some cases, apparently it is.
It's worked out for me so far, the couple times that I've tried. But so I ended up working as a pastry assistant in one of their restaurants, and then kind of ended up being there for about 6 years, working my way through the line at a couple of restaurants, opening a few restaurants with them, kind of having run and developed their kind of quick casual concept Recess, which they've, I think, now sold. But, so just a wide range of experience there, which kind of just kept it interesting, getting to do something new every year or so.
Did you not work in a Basque restaurant at some point?
Yeah. So that first restaurant that I had kind of cold emailed about was Cooks and Soldiers, which just had their 10th anniversary, but was actually, they had only been open for about a month or so when I started working there.
Did you know anything about Basque cooking?
A little bit. Again, that was one of those weird interests my dad had. I think my parents had their rehearsal dinner for their wedding at a Basque restaurant. And so he would always be talking about that. When we went back to California to kind of visit where they got married and everything, we went and had dinner at the Basque restaurant, which was still there. So mostly what I knew about Basque food was cow tongue with green sauce, because that was the one dish he really would just like talk about. And I think he had a couple Basque cookbooks that I'd read.
What's the attraction of tongue? My Jewish grandmother used to make it, and I think I liked it till I knew what it was.
It's just a big muscle. It takes flavor pretty well. You get fatty texture without having big pockets of fat. So, when it's properly prepared, it's really, really tender. It's really delicious, kind of briskety, honestly. I think a lot of it is just like oh, I'm better than you. If you know, right? You're like, I know tongue is delicious and I like it, and therefore I'm special.
Well, offal is a very hard sell in America, and yet it is universally consumed. Mm-hmm. Arguably, out of our agricultural riches, we are incredibly wasteful.
Yeah, we're spoiled of not having to be creative with those off bits. That's actually one of the many things food related my dad loves to go on diatribe is probably not the right word, but
How about rants? Rants is good, right?
upon
Discourse, yeah. Okay.
how the cuisines of France and all of these other countries are so much more rich and storied than us because they had to be creative, and how all of these great classical dishes began as peasant necessity, which is true. I think there's a great book by Judith Jones' husband, Evan Jones, kind of on the history of American food. And it's half cookbook and half just sort of like a history of American cuisine. And I think that's a big part of what he talks about is, the European settlers got over here from having to scratch and eat liver and eat tongue. And then they get here and they're like, oh, there's room for all these cows. I can just have steak every night and just feed the dogs the rest of it and not have to worry about it ever again. That is maybe arguably the defining characteristic of American cuisine is large centerpiece meat and being able to eat like that. Historically, we, have been, I think, something that's needing to change now, just the way the food system is and beef prices and whatnot.
And there's a health and ecology element in this that's massive. I mean, the concept of a big piece of protein at the center of the plate. I was talking to Dan Barber. He said, name dropping, and
actually got his
Dan
book on my bedside table right now.
He's not anti-beef at all. He believes beef plays a role in a good cuisine, but raised locally and in proportion to what is majority vegetable. Is that your view?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think, especially being a hotel chef and doing a lot of banquets, is like a constant internal struggle of like, I read a lot of Michael Pollan, Dan Barber, like Mark Kurlansky. So it's like, do have this like very existential tension all the time about sustainable food systems and like what's healthy for us. And then you turn around and like, oh, the client wants beef fillet for their 100-person wedding. And you're like, that's like 50 cows.
Not again. Yeah. Although as a home cook, I got to tell you, there's nothing easier than a tender one. You put it in, you take it out, people think you can cook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very fancy. So it's definitely a conflict of personal interest. I do spend a lot of time trying to think about like, what can I do to try and change this? And that's where having the restaurants at the hotel is nice to sort of be able to serve pizzas where you can put just a little bit of protein and you can be a little more creative with the cuts and still make people happy and still like some food costs. So it's trying to use one area to sort of balance out the other and maybe introduce people to new things.
Well, let me back up and get to where you're cooking today. You're cooking in Atlanta and somehow you end up in Savannah.
So I got a call from Whitney Otaka to do my own kind of name dropping. She's a friend of a good friend. We've met at a couple of events and sort of interacted over the years. And she had been involved in this project with Thompson Savannah as the executive chef pre-opening. She'd called me numerous times over the years when she was down in Cumberland, kind of asking if I was interested in coming to work with her, and the timing was never quite right. But when she called me about being the executive sous chef with her at this hotel and kind of explained to me that, and at first I was like, hotels, because again, you think those big top sirloin, tenderloin banquets for 500 people and, as a restaurant chef.
Well, Jean-Georges is in a hotel.
Yeah, I think there's a wide range of hotel restaurants, but I think for most of us working in restaurants, the view is the Holiday Inn banquet. You're like, ooh, I don't want to do that. But, she kind of explains to me that the Thompson brand is very chef forward. They seek out these partnerships with more well-known chefs, celebrity chefs, and give us a lot of freedom and leeway to kind of run an F&B department as if it were a little more independent and kind of really focus on the quality of the food. So I was like, okay, I'm interested. And I was kind of just ready to move on from where I was in Atlanta at the time. And those like early post-COVID days, like late 2020, early 2021, where I think everybody was kind of just like, I need to change. Traffic in Atlanta had gotten extra terrible. I think everyone forgot how to drive the like 2 weeks that they weren't allowed to leave the house. The timing was right for me and for my partner as well. So we just kind of upped stakes to work on this project. And then Whitney ended up kind of making the decision that for her, that wasn't the right project. So she left, had another executive chef came in. He was there for about a year. And then he kind of also was like, I don't know that I'm in love with hotels and how this works for me. And he left and I was still there.
So at what age did you get to run your own restaurant?
31.
That's relatively precocious, isn't it?
Yeah. There are definitely days where I wake up and I'm like, what am I doing?
What is it that's attractive about running a hotel restaurant? Or if not a hotel restaurant, your hotel restaurant? There may be big differences.
With my particular situation, there is a great amount of creative freedom. You know, I don't work with an ownership group that wants to come in and say, well, my favorite meal is beef bourguignon, so we have to have beef bourguignon on the menu. You know, like they're always pretty happy to see what we're doing, to see what's new, to see what we're trying out. So having just that kind of very creative and supportive ownership team and leadership team there in the hotel as well is really nice to kind of, you know, like I can talk things through with them and they have thoughts and opinions, but it's never like a hard, you just have to do this and that is what it is, and like moving on. That's
the restaurant, you have several venues in the hotel, Fleeting being your flagship. Are you serving hotel guests or is this a destination for locals?
So both. I think, you know, the goal has always been that we have decent hotel capture, like getting the guests to stay in the hotel and dine with us. But the goal has always been to get a local crowd that's loyal, that wants to come back, that's like, this is our special occasion restaurant, or this is our once a month restaurant, because Savannah's pretty seasonal when it comes to tourism. You know, it's hot as hell here in August, so nobody really is coming to Savannah in August.
It's hotter than hell.
Yeah, so we're, you know, very reliant on local loyalty, and we want to be part of the community.
Well, how do you achieve that at a hotel?
A lot of work with local farmers. We have a director of culture who does a lot of work with like local charities and local organizations. We have a good partnership with Art Southeast. So just really trying to like get involved in the community so that they understand that we're here for them as well as being here for our hotel guests. I do a lot of work with like other restaurants around town and local farms to really, you know, try and again support them and get the feedbacks. Like I love my chicken farmer that we use for the restaurant at Fleeting.
Very few people can say honestly, I love my chicken farmer.
No, he's a great.
Where did you find your beloved chicken farmer?
At the Forsyth Farmers Market. Just kind of before the hotel was open, I would go on Saturdays to do my personal shopping and kind of check it out. And I would buy chicken from him, and it was just amazing. Like it didn't matter how long I got distracted and left it in the oven because I was doing something around the house, and it was just always delicious. So I bugged him and I bugged him and I bugged him to sell his chicken at the restaurant. And, you know, sometimes it's kind of a challenge because maybe not everybody wants to eat a whole half a chicken, but I still have to pay for a whole chicken. So, you know, trying to be creative about how to use the whole animal and still, you know, serve like a restaurant-sized portion.
Tell me that. How do you use the whole animal and still serve a restaurant-sized portion?
So what we're doing currently is we'll serve the chicken airline that we cook sous vide and then pick up kind of on our flat top. And we braise all of the dark meat quarters. And then you get like a little bit of pulled dark meat on the plate. And then like whatever we don't use in the restaurant, we either will funnel through banquets because we do a lot of chicken quarter like plates for banquets, or we'll serve it for family meal. We do big family meal in the cafeteria at the hotel for the whole staff twice a day. So a lot of food going through the hotel there. So it's, you know, we don't let any of it go to waste.
Your philosophy appears to be extremely local.
As much as I can, yeah, where it's feasible.
I mean, everyone's got different reasons, but what are yours?
For me, I think it's kind of three main points. Again, community, like really wanting to support local agriculture and support the farmers who are growing in our area. Ecologically, it's better, just fewer miles the food has to travel. Food quality is better because, you know, again, an herb that got picked yesterday and brought to the hotel, or in the case of some of the herbs we grow at the hotel in our little garden, got picked an hour ago and then is on your plate, is going to be better than one that was grown in Colombia and then somehow magically shipped to the United States and through an airport in Atlanta and through a truck down to Savannah, and, you know, who knows how old it is at that point. So better food quality, better ecological responsibility, and also kind of like we touched on earlier, I just don't know in general how sustainable like just huge monoculture agriculture is going to be. And so it's, I think, just a better choice for the environment, for the food system sustainability, to be supporting these like local, more diverse farmers.
I don't mean this to be in any way insulting, though it may come out sounding like that.
All right.
Your main courses are very traditional, basic.
Yeah.
Steak, chicken, duck breast, local fish, and a pasta dish. Does that handcuff you?
Yeah, it's been, I would say, a battle I've been fighting since we opened Fleeting of if I had absolutely my way and I was just to say, I don't care what the customers think, they can come or not, it would be a lot more small plates, tapas style. Again, I'm very influenced by that Basque restaurant. I want to eat a ton of little small plates, and then if I have room, maybe finish with like one huge steak. If I had my way, that would probably be how we ran things. But we do have a more, I would say, traditional clientele most of the time who they want to come, they want to have my entree, her entree. Sometimes we get people that want to share a bunch of stuff, but kind of trying to balance customer demand, what customers want and expect versus kind of what I would like to do. I had a great CDC who was working for me for a couple years, who was like kind of our main driving force behind Fleeting for the last 2 years.
Chef de cuisine.
Yes. So he was kind of worked under me, but had pretty much creative control, creative freedom with the menu. And so he's been kind of running with his vision. He's recently moved on to pursue kind of his own thing. So super happy for him with that. And with that, I think we'll probably be trying to do a little bit of change of direction with Fleeting, mix it up a little bit more. I think try and move it a little more towards those small plates, smaller, more vegetable focused, maybe meat flavored plates, just because I think that's how I want to cook and want to eat. And we'll see how it goes. Maybe leave some of those more classic bistro type dishes in the lobby bar available for people who want them, and just kind of play around with the format and see what the response is.
So your fantasy first new dish you're going to put on at Fleeting is?
I actually was working on something yesterday that I'm really excited about. It's these coal roasted beets with a hazelnut aioli and kind of a pastrami spice dust, a sauerkraut dust, and then shaving some more hazelnuts over the top like a Parmesan. Was super happy with how that came together. So
Ooh, I'll be right there.
Yeah. So hopefully next week we'll have that one ready to roll.
Okay, I'll be there next week.
Perfect.
You do any Southern cooking?
A little bit. I try to be careful with diving headlong into that one because so many people do have that expectation: collard greens, mac and cheese, fried chicken, biscuits, pimento cheese, shrimp and grits, where it's not something that I necessarily grew up cooking. So maybe those flavor profiles aren't as instinctual to me, and I don't want to insult anybody. And there's also a lot of fantastic restaurants that specialize in Southern food.
Well, when you talk about not insulting anyone with cooking you didn't grow up on, that gets to the whole battle over appropriation. I mean, you lived in Oklahoma. How dare you cook anything from another culture?
Only chicken fried steak allowed, no chicken fried chicken.
Right. You have a problem with I was going to say non-ethnic, with white American chefs cooking the foods of other cultures?
I think there's a way to do it respectfully, and I think it's, just trying to be aware that it might upset people, that it might be viewed in a negative way. I would definitely think twice before opening an Indian restaurant. But I love Indian food. I love to cook Indian food at home. I'll take different techniques, like frying the spices ahead of time to get more flavor in something, like I use in our basmati rice pilaf that we have at the rooftop restaurant. But I don't want to be like, oh, this is authentic Indian food because, again, I didn't grow up with my grandma teaching me these flavor combinations to a point where it's just inherent in my palate. I just try to be careful. I want to give credit where it's due. I also don't want to take away from somebody that, if you're super passionate about something and just because you don't have some sort of genetic right to it, I think that's a little silly. I think there are a lot of chefs out there who maybe aren't ethnically this, that, or whatever, but they do have a true passion and respect for the cuisine and for the culture. And if that's something that they want to express, I don't see a problem with it.
Do your folks handle room service?
We do room service through a digital dining app. So we don't have a dedicated room service department anymore. We kind of started with one and it just didn't financially make a lot of sense. So now we run room service through one of the restaurants, and if you order it, we'll still deliver it. It's got the tray and the little cover and everything. But it's just not that very super traditional, someone's just sitting there in a queue with the phone waiting for your order.
What do you think the direction of food in America is or is going to be?
I think it's definitely diversifying. I think there's, kind of to the point of a lot of people getting interested in something that's maybe not the cuisine they grew up with is taking off in a good way. I think there is appropriation arguments. There's definitely some tension with it, but overall, I just think we're still such a nation of immigrants, and kind of however you feel about that and whatever the political situation is, it continues to be true. There are still a lot of people that come to this country and they bring their food and they bring their culture and their enthusiasms. And I think a lot of people really embrace that. There's, probably areas where it's not the case, but I think in general, we're still really looking for that food identity as America. I think there are a lot of people who are becoming more conscious that having a 12-ounce ribeye for dinner every day isn't sustainable for us or for the planet. And so we're looking for those alternatives in cultures where maybe they know and have been practicing kind of using meat as a flavoring for a longer period of time, or new flavor profiles. I still think we're all a little fatty, maybe, like we're kind of looking for the next big thing, the next new restaurant, the next big chef, and spend a lot of time focusing on that. I mean, how many media publications have a rising star, best new restaurant? Like a lot of focus is always kind of put on something that's new. But I also see a lot of things kind of moving out of cities. I think a lot of young chefs my age are starting to want to open their own restaurants and not work for Jean-Georges for 30 years before they go do their own thing. And that means maybe moving to a smaller town, moving to an Athens, moving to a Savannah, where you can afford the real estate, where you can afford to do something on your own at a younger age or without so many financial investment strings, which I really enjoy getting to see that kind of young energy, things that are a little maybe less dynastic, but have a little more freedom to play. I think Jarrett Stieber in Atlanta with Little Bear is a great example of something that kind of, he did pop-ups for a long time. He's very irreverent, maybe not the right word, but like playful with the menu. It's lots of like tiny cute croutons, like literally written out on the menu, which I think is funny, and it's not something that everybody could get away with, but something that he does. And now he's running his own little restaurant. He survived COVID doing pop-ups where it was kind of a different ethnic thing every month, whatever was the flavor of the month with his pop-up. And now he's running a successful restaurant with a Bib Gourmand. And, I think that's a pretty indicative success story of where I kind of see things going.
Is fine dining in trouble?
I don't think so. I think it may look a little different, but I think there's always people that want the iron tablecloth. I think the service aspect of fine dining will always save it. People want to feel special like that. And there's some people that have the money to live in fine dining, but then there's always the people like maybe like me who like, I'm only going to go to sort of circle back acid or Echibari like once or twice in my life. But there's a lot of people in the world that are like that. And so having that something that you can really like look up to, aspire to, that inspires us chefs who maybe don't have the opportunity to work in an environment like that. I think there's something special about it that will always keep it around. Maybe it's not always iron tablecloths. Maybe it all sorts to drift a little towards more Alinea and something experiential, but I think it will always exist.
Is the behind of the kitchen door chaos getting better? Are chefs still screaming and yelling? Are people still being forced to take shot drinks? Is it still misogynistic? What's going on?
I mean, for me, I think I have been very fortunate in the kitchen I've worked in. None of that is really anything I personally have experienced, which is not to say that it doesn't still exist. I think there are still a lot of like women in kitchens particularly who do deal with a lot of misogyny or extra barriers. And I just think I've been really fortunate. I think I personally try really hard, sometimes maybe too hard to be nice chef. And, it's because at the end of the day, we're cooking food. We're here to have a good time. We're here to help people have a good time. Like, I don't need to make you feel like a lesser human being because you didn't put enough salt in something.
No, I can feel like a lesser human being entirely on my own.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know. I think a lot of people end up in kitchens because they are a little adrift maybe, or, they felt like they didn't have any other opportunities. And so I try to look at it as somewhere to like provide a good work environment. If it's something that you're just doing, passing through to put yourself through school or whatever, like I want you to care about what you're doing while you're here. I want you to do a good job. But I don't know. I don't want to make you leave feeling like you're a complete piece of trash over something at the end of the day as trivial as like we're cooking dinner. It's important, and I want all the guests to have a great experience as well, but it doesn't need to come at the cost of somebody's humanity. I do think that in general, the trend is moving away from that. I think with social media and maybe cancel culture, for better or for worse, is making it more difficult to be angry, shouty, abusive chef. I don't think that the audience for restaurants really wants to deal with that or hear about it. It just doesn't seem worth the risk, to yell at people anymore.
What's the future for you?
I want to try and work with local farms, with, maybe having an inn with Hyatt and a bigger corporation that has a lot of pull and sway over how we work with vendors, how we purchase. So one day try to parlay that into how do we work on buying more sustainably, operating more sustainably. And I don't know exactly what that looks like. I don't know that there's a job title for it. But I think if I was to be 80 and retired and look back on my life and be happy about it, if I could say I figured out how to engage local farms into more of the industrial food purchasing system, be super, super cool.
Chef, it's been a delight meeting you.
Well, thank you so much.
I very much enjoyed this conversation. Best of luck to you going forward.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I'm hopeful about it and looking forward to it. So, and if you want to send Dan Barber my way to give lessons on sustainability and restaurant purchasing, I would be super thrilled.
I'll see what I can do.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Chef Victoria Shore on Culinary Characters Unlocked. I'm David Page, and I'll see you next time.